Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're jumping right into a truly fascinating study that gets to the very core of biology and the science of aging. We're breaking down some groundbreaking research out of the University of Exeter, and it reveals a fundamental universal rule about life itself. If you've ever wondered how biological investments literally shape the lifespan of living creatures, well, you are in exactly the right place. So why does giving life actually shorten lifespan? We almost always think of reproduction, of giving life, as this purely positive biological imperative, right? Passing on genes is the ultimate goal of any species. But what if I told you that this very act, the biological drive to create the next generation, is actually the ultimate evolutionary paradox? It's a paradox where your success in one area absolutely guarantees a harsh penalty in another. Because the reality is, nature demands a heavy toll. Biological generosity, when an organism pours its internal resources into its offspring, doesn't just happen by magic. It comes with a direct, highly measurable, and ultimately inevitable cost to the parent. You simply can't get something out of nothing in the natural world. And as we'll see, this rule applies to absolutely everything. Section 1. The Paradox of Life. We're going to uncover exactly how life and death aren't just separate events waiting at the beginning and end of a timeline. They're actually intimately, physically linked through evolutionary trade-offs. It's this constant microscopic balancing act that every single living creature has to negotiate from the second it's born. And to really understand this paradox, we need to do some biological detective work. Enter the Japanese quail. Researchers at the University of Exeter recently published a fascinating study on these specific birds in the journal Proceedings of the Royal Society B. And it turns out these little ground nesting birds are the absolute perfect models for unlocking some massive biological secrets about how energy is spent. Section 2. The Quail Experiment. Now, you might be wondering, why Japanese quails? Well, the crucial thing here is their highly specific reproductive strategy. For these birds, the parent's effort is pretty much entirely finished the moment the chicks hatch. There's almost zero post-hatching care. And that means almost all of the mother's biological investment is concentrated right at the starting line, in producing the egg itself. This isolated, massive burst of energy makes it incredibly easy for scientists to track exactly how much of a toll maternity takes. So, researchers selectively bred wild quails over 5 to 6 generations to create two very distinct lineages. One group was engineered for a high investment strategy. They laid exceptionally large eggs, resulting in super robust chicks with great survival rates. The other group used a low investment strategy, laying much smaller eggs. By setting up these two distinct groups, the scientists could finally put the true cost of biological generosity to the test. Section 3. The Heavy Biological Cost. Okay, so we've got our two types of maternal investment. But what's the actual price tag for the mothers? When researchers tracked the lives of these two groups of female quails side by side, the consequences weren't just noticeable, they were dramatic. 20%. That is the massive drop in lifespan experienced by the high investment females, the mothers producing those really large, robust eggs. Let that sink in for a second. By giving more to their offspring, these mothers were literally giving away a full fifth of their own potential lifespans. It's a staggering biological tax just for ensuring the superior health of the next generation. And looking at the data side by side, it's incredibly stark. The generous mothers laying the large eggs lived an average of just 595 days. But their low investment counterparts, the ones laying the small eggs, they lived for 770 days. That is nearly half a year longer, which for a small bird is a massive amount of time. The correlation here between reproductive generosity and an early demise is just undeniable. So what's actually happening under the hood here? How does biology enforce this penalty? The simple answer is limited resources. Think of a living organism kind of like a smartphone battery with a strictly finite amount of daily power. The energy that a quail devotes to reproduction, like building a giant nutrient-dense egg, well, that energy simply can't be used for the natural day-to-day maintenance of her own body. You cannot simultaneously excel at extreme reproduction and extreme self-preservation. Evolution forces a really harsh choice. Let's break down exactly what that lack of bodily maintenance actually looks like. Highly invested quails suffer from way less efficient cell repair, simply because they're pouring so much energy into those large eggs. Their immune systems become measurably weakened, and ultimately this cascading failure leads to an accelerated wear and tear on their entire body. They're essentially putting their own aging process on fast forward just to give their chicks a head start. But wait, what about the males, right? Do the fathers pay that same price? Well, generally speaking, male quails actually live longer. Their biological role in reproduction is obviously much more limited, which means they just don't face that same extreme physiological pressure. Now, the researchers did know that this specific experiment didn't run quite long enough to fully map out exactly how this long-term selective breeding might have indirectly affected male longevity over many, many generations. But still, the stark difference between the sexes in the short term perfectly highlights just how uniquely taxing maternal investment really is. Section 4, a universal evolutionary trade-off. What's absolutely crucial to take away from all this is that we aren't just talking about birds anymore. The researchers point out that these experimental observations transcend the Japanese quail. We're zooming out to look at a fundamental, universal law of biology that applies across the entire tree of life. And it potentially offers some major clues into human aging, too. The study leaves us with one incredibly powerful conclusion: reproduction is never free. Behind every single reproductive strategy in nature, there is a hidden compromise shaped by millions of years of evolution. It's a constant, unavoidable tug-of-war between transmitting life to the next generation and preserving your own. So I'll leave you with this provocative thought to ponder today. In the grand scheme of survival, is ultimate biological success defined by how long you manage to live, or by how much of yourself you're willing to give away to the future? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope this completely changes how you view the incredible biological balancing act happening all around us.